Throughout history, empires have risen slowly, patiently, brick by brick, generation by generation. They were built with discipline, ambition, fear, belief, and sometimes sheer luck. Yet again and again, these massive structures of power did not fall because of thousands of mistakes, but because of just one decision, one moment of silence, one misjudgment that could not be taken back. Empires rarely collapse overnight, but they often begin to die in a single instant. This is the story of how a single mistake was enough to push powerful civilizations toward irreversible collapse. Let us begin with the Western Roman Empire. By the 4th century, Rome was already fragile. The borders were long, the army expensive, the bureaucracy heavy, but Rome was still Rome. Its mistake was not military weakness, it was confidence. A dangerous confidence that the old system would always work. In the year 376, the Visigoths appeared at Rome's borders. They were not invaders at first, they were refugees. Fleeing a greater terror, the Huns, they begged Rome for permission to cross the Danube River and settle within imperial territory. Rome agreed. This was the mistake. Roman officials allowed them in, but failed to control them. Food was stolen, corruption spread, abuse followed. The Visigoths, once desperate refugees, became angry, organized, and armed. In 378, at the Battle of Adrianople, the Roman army was destroyed. The emperor himself was killed. Rome had invited the problem inside its walls. From that moment on, the empire was never truly stable again. In 410, Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. The psychological damage was as great as the physical one. The mistake was not letting refugees in. The mistake was arrogance, believing Rome could absorb anything without consequence. Now let us move east to the Mongol Empire. At its height, it was the largest contiguous land empire in history. Fast, brutal, efficient. No army could match it. And yet, the Mongols made one fatal error after the death of Genghis Khan. They stopped choosing unity over blood. The Mongol system relied on loyalty to a single supreme leader. But after generations passed, power became divided among rival heirs. Instead of expanding outward, the empire turned inward. Brothers fought brothers. Khanates ignored each other. Strategy was replaced by pride. The mistake was not external pressure, it was internal division. Without unity, the empire lost its unstoppable momentum. Trade routes weakened, armies slowed, regions became independent. The Mongol Empire did not collapse in a dramatic explosion. It simply fell apart, quietly, piece by piece. Now consider the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs ruled through fear. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was one of the largest cities in the world. Their armies were strong, their religion powerful. But their greatest mistake was how they treated their neighbors instead of integrating conquered peoples. The Aztecs humiliated them. They demanded heavy tribute. They took prisoners for ritual sacrifice. Hatred grew silently. When Hernan Cortés arrived in 1519 with a small Spanish force, the Aztecs believed he was insignificant. They even allowed him into the capital. That was the mistake. Cortés was not powerful alone, but the enemies of the Aztecs were everywhere. Thousands of indigenous warriors joined the Spanish, not because they loved Spain, but because they hated the Aztecs more. The empire collapsed not because of Spanish weapons, but because of a political miscalculation. The Aztecs had created too many enemies and no allies. One decision to rule through terror rather than loyalty sealed their fate. Next, the Ottoman Empire for centuries. It adapted, that was its strength. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, adaptation slowed. While Europe industrialized, modernized armies, and reformed administration, the Ottoman leadership hesitated. The mistake was delay. Reforms were discussed, postponed, resisted. Traditional systems were protected long after they stopped working. By the time reforms were fully attempted, the empire was already economically dependent, militarily outdated, and politically unstable. This single error waiting too long to change turned the empire into what Europeans called the sick man of Europe. It did not collapse suddenly. It faded. But the root cause was hesitation at the moment change was necessary. Now let us talk about the Soviet Union. It had nuclear weapons, global influence, and immense territory. Yet its fatal mistake was refusing to admit failure. The economic system was failing, but official narratives insisted everything was fine. Information was controlled. Truth was delayed. When reforms finally came under Gorbachev, they came too fast and too late. The mistake was suppression of reality by hiding problems. Instead of fixing them early, the system became brittle. When pressure arrived, it shattered. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved without a major war. An empire collapsed because it lied to itself for too long. Finally, consider the Byzantine Empire. It survived Rome. It survived invasions. It survived centuries of pressure. Yet its final mistake was political short-sightedness. In 1453, Constantinople was weak. Instead of unity, the empire was divided by internal religious disputes and distrust of allies. Help was rejected, delayed, or poorly coordinated. When the Ottomans arrived with cannons, the city stood almost alone. The mistake was isolation. Empires fall when they believe they can stand alone forever. History teaches us something uncomfortable. Collapse rarely comes from outside alone. It is invited in through pride, through delay, through fear of change, through silence. Empires are not destroyed by enemies. They are undone by one moment where the wrong choices made and cannot be reversed. And once that moment passes, history does not forgive.